We seem to have a quorum, so we'll make a start to our meeting. And again, remind all members to keep their electronic devices turned off. We have a briefing today on the implementation of apprenticeship strategies and a briefing from the Northern Ireland Commission for Children and Young People. We have apologies from Robin Swan, Phil Flanagan and Pat Ramsey. Are there any other apologies? None to record. On Chairman's business, members, because of the late plenary sitting last night, the decision was made to start today's meeting at 11 a.m. and therefore to cancel the briefing on structure to deliver success and assured skills. This will be rescheduled in the forward work programme. And can I advise members that the second event for the young people for the committee inquiry into post-special educational needs provision and education, employment and training for those with learning disabilities will take place in the South Eastern Regional College and Bangor campus tomorrow, the 4th of June. And again, I have been penciled in to attend that. I don't know, is it open for any member of the committee? No. It's not.
The idea was that we were having two young people events. We had one 2 weeks ago in Enniskillen, and this one then is in Bangor. We had 16 young people that came to Enniskillen, one from different walks of life, from school, from FE, from day opportunities, day care centres, supported employment. We're doing the same tomorrow in Bangor. But because it's so small, we don't want them to be intimidated by having lots of members there. Robin went to the last one and he just basically did an intro and then a thank you at the end. We have Positive Futures, the charity, facilitating. Tomorrow we have Assembly Community Connect and we have researchers facilitating. We will break the young people into 3 groups of 4 or 5 a group, and then we have set out a number of questions which we ask, and then we have a note taker with a flip chart in each group to note it down, and then we'll be doing a report which will be fed back into the committee and then into the inquiry.
Okay, for your information, members. Again, at page 6 we have the draft minutes of the meeting of the 27th of May. And can I seek your agreement? Okay. On matters arising at page 13, the agreed action points as are in the pack. Members agreed as what's before them? All agreed? Okay. Correspondence at page 22 and tabled. At page 31 there's correspondence from ECOS ANI inviting the committee to one of their Steps to Success facilities. And again, it's open to the committee. Are the committee content that we take up the offer to go and to visit one of these, to visit ECOS ANI? Yeah.
They've invited us to the Foyle Employment Centre in September. Now, I know we won't be able to do it in September, but we could accept and do it maybe October or November time. Is there content?
Yep. Members content? Okay. Page 42, again, there are 6 on table. There are 6 invitations listed. If members wish to attend any of the events, then can you please inform the committee staff who can make the necessary arrangements. At page 49, there's the draft forward work programme until the 4th of July 2015, and all the briefings may be scheduled as they arise. Members content with the draft work programme? Okay. We now come to the departmental briefing on the implementation of apprenticeship strategy. At page 51 you have the departmental correspondence, and at page 53 you have the PowerPoint presentation. We want to welcome Yvonne Croskery, Director of the Youth Policy and Strategy Division, Mr Philip Rogers, Head of the Apprenticeship and Economic Inactivity, and Mr Clement CU. Yeah, sorry, I hope I've got that right. Head of the Curriculum Development and Delivery Model Branch. We gave you 10 minutes or so to go through your presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions. And I would remind members, keep your questions today focused and to the point, because we're going to be running fairly tight for time.
Good morning, Chair, members. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present on the ongoing implementation of the apprenticeship strategy, securing our success. Let me first of all thank you, as I say, for giving us this opportunity and maybe to set out that our overall aim. I'm going to set the sort of very high level strategic aim of the strategy and then move straight to the slides. I'll run through this as quickly as I can. Obviously you'll know that we're very keen to establish a world-class apprenticeship, one which our young people aspire to participate in and drive forward in the growth and innovation of our economy here in Northern Ireland. It is clearly a major challenge which it will take, in our view, some time to deliver fully upon, and it's important that we maintain engagement throughout this implementation journey. Before we use the slides for the briefing, I'd like to sort of frame some of our implementation priorities that are ongoing at the minute around the wider system, and part of it as we move towards a new model which is employer-led. Apprenticeships are vital as just one aspect of the new system of employment and learning we're trying to establish. A key focus across the apprenticeship team and the work of my wider division is to ensure that we create a genuine pathway for our young people. The implementation teams across United Youth Training Apprenticeships are working closely together to ensure that at whatever level the participant joins our learning pathways, we have a cohesive system that allows support and progression right through from entry level right through to level 8, and that's at PhD level. Given the size of the challenge that we're working to, obviously, and we are piloting key aspects as we move forward, and this is particularly important around establishing that employer-led architecture. You'll be aware that we really are, the real backbone of this strategy is really about employer ownership, and that's central to the new system moving forward. Up until now, apprenticeships were really generally developed on a UK-wide basis. Under our new model, our employers are taking the lead in developing the actual apprenticeship content and making sure that it meets their needs. This represents both a real opportunity and a significant challenge for local employers if we're to be successful, and our new approach will allow employers to help shape, as I say, their workforce as we move forward through that earning as you learn concept. So, as I say, moving forward, the Minister's vision is that we must be meeting the needs of the employers. That must be paramount. We must be ensuring we've got, as I say, those pathways for our young people. So aspects of the new model that we are already piloting include that we have an interim strategic advisory forum set up, and we have a series of sectoral partnerships led by employers to drive forward this new model, to make sure that their voice is heard, and moving into higher level apprenticeships, which will inform us at the minute on the range of key aspects of the new system ahead of its full introduction. As I say, I'm going to pass over now to my colleague Phil Rogers and then to Clement to run through the slides. We're very conscious of time, Chair, and just to run through that to give members an opportunity to ask us questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vaughan. Thank you, Chair and members. I appreciate we are a bit pressed for time, and we did share a lot of slides with you. So if we maybe sort of flick through a few. The first slides really are just sort of setting out the background of the strategy, which was obviously launched last year. So if you're okay, I will not labour those. If we maybe flick to the fourth slide, which sets out the sort of the new apprenticeship system, just to remind the committee of what we're trying to achieve in terms of the new system. The key aspects, I suppose, to draw out from that are that in the future, apprenticeships will commence at level 3. That will be broadly equivalent to A level and be available right up until level 8. We've got a strong focus on shifting apprenticeships into higher level apprenticeships, as we call them, which is level 4, 5, 6 in the sort of the skills ladder. So at the minute, you'll appreciate that apprenticeships NI is available at level 2 and level 3, and we want to certainly lift the focus. Quality will be key in terms of the apprenticeship. For that we have to understand that there will be a duration of at least 2 years for each apprenticeship. We're also keen that we the core components or the core qualifications that will be achieved through an apprenticeship will be sufficiently broad to allow mobility both within the sector and across the wider economy. We're very conscious we don't want to be creating a system which meets the needs of one employer or a specific employer. It's very much about mobility and progression. And I suppose the other key thing to pull out in terms of the new system is our desire to widen the occupational areas that apprenticeships are currently available in, look to new areas where there haven't been apprenticeships offered in the past, and that's particularly important, particularly at higher levels. And we think of some of the pilots, which we'll touch on later, that we've already got up and running in ICT, and we've got some pilots up and running in terms of accountancy and subjects that or occupational areas like that. If we move on, then the next slide, which just sort of sets apprenticeships again. This is just to remind members of where we're hoping to take the new system, the new landscape that we're looking at. Apprenticeships really as part of a sort of at the top end in terms of the landscape, alongside the sort of the full-time FE and HE offer. And I suppose it's important to realise that they will not, apprenticeships necessarily lead to different qualifications, and what we're trying to achieve is that they will lead to the same qualifications as somebody who maybe goes to full-time further education or full-time higher education. It's about a route to getting a qualification rather than a different or separate qualification. And that sort of slide on the landscape just sets it in terms of the review of youth training, which is, I understand that members got a briefing on a couple of weeks ago, and how that sits. That's the new offer at level 2 that will be coming forward shortly. If members don't mind, I'll jump on a couple of slides and we'll talk about implementation. The first slide in implementation says obviously we're aiming to introduce the reform system in September 2016. We appreciate that we will introduce a new system in 2016, but it will require the system itself is likely to evolve and change and improve as we move forward. We're currently established some project management arrangements. We've established a number of projects then to give life, I suppose, to the strategy, to take forward a number of projects that will then allow us to implement the key policy commitments that the Minister made when he launched the strategy last year. We have secured some funding through DFP's Change Fund as part of the budget, so we've got £7.5 million to spend on piloting aspects of the new apprenticeships system. Principally around that funding will be for to pilot higher level apprenticeship projects, which we hope to kick off in September in a range of level 3 and some level 2 offers that we'll be taking forward from September 2015. We have also then obviously established our internal management structures in terms of programme steering group and programme management and all the rest of it to make sure that we're going to deliver what we say we're going to deliver, so that we are operational by 2016. I suppose if we move to the slide then, that sort of the delivery structures. Really, this slide sets out what we hope to achieve in terms of advice and in terms of how we will steer the new system moving forward. We have established an interim strategic advisory forum that's being chaired by Brian Keating, who used to chair the Matrix panel, and that group is really set in place to deliver for us advice and guidance on how we implement what we've said in the strategy. That strategic forum has established already 2 subgroups. One is looking at legislation and the sort of ongoing or the permanent membership and role of the forum once the system is fully operational in 2016. It's also established a second subgroup which is looking at employer support and what needs to happen and what we need to do in terms of trying to encourage greater participation in the new system by employers in particular. The group is made up of sort of a range of key stakeholders, representatives from our higher and further education sectors, business representatives and employers, and the trade unions. So everybody is represented on that strategic forum and on the 2 subgroups which are sort of taking forward the work of the group. We've also then below that, and one of the key sort of groups in terms of delivery and implementation of the new strategy will be what we call sector partnerships. We have currently established 3 of them at the minute, and the role of sector partnerships will be to develop and to agree the qualifications and the content of the various qualifications that will be used in apprenticeships moving forward. So again, that is employers very much in the clear lead in terms of the sector partnerships, but supported by the training side of things, so with the further education sector and the higher education sector. recognising again, that employers are the ones who are going to be developing apprenticeships, are going to be designing apprenticeships that meet their needs, and so we've put them very much at the centre of those sector partnerships. The 3 sector partnerships we've established to date are in ICT, in agri-food, and in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing and engineering. We have also then had some discussions with other sort of sectors and other training organisations to look at how we might establish some more. We are hopeful that in the not too distant future we'll be establishing a group that will look at accountancy, perhaps financial services. We've also had some useful discussions around the possibilities of a new sector partnership that we look at health and life sciences. We've had some preliminary discussions as well around construction, around tourism and hospitality. So there's a number of sector partnerships and a number of sectors that are coming forward. Because as I say, this is the whole new system is about employers being in the lead, and we're sort of very encouraged by the sort of employer representative bodies who are willing to engage with us and are bringing forward, hopefully, some firmer proposals. If we flick on the Strategic Advisory Forum, I'm conscious I'm sort of taking up a lot of time here, and probably more than I intended to. Strategic Advisory Forum, again, that slide just sets out what I've already talked about, the sort of the key functions and the key role of the Strategic Advisory Forum. Equally, the sector partnerships, again, that just sort of talks in general terms about what they do and who's involved in those. If we move then to the slide titled Projects, that sets out the projects which we have put in place in order to implement the strategy and the commitments within the strategy. So moving on, we'll just sort of maybe go through each of those very, very briefly. So in terms of strategy implementation then, we have already been discussing the possibility of through the strategic forum, or through the subgroup of the forum, of introducing legislation to underpin the new system. The option or the opportunity to include a clause within the draft employment bill has been identified, and so we will be introducing a clause as part of the draft employment bill, which will obviously be introduced to the Assembly in due course. That's the actual mechanics are outside of our control, but we have managed to secure a clause or a draft clause in that bill, which you will no doubt see in due course as well. In terms of our internationalisation project, we have a proposal was submitted for Erasmus Plus funding. It was led by SWC, but it was a number of sort of colleges and on both sides of the border, and it's sort of a strategic project, and it's two sort of things that it's looking at in particular, that project that was seeking funding for. One is to sort of address the issue of widening participation, particularly amongst, in respect of this application, amongst women in the ICT sector, but also to introduce some mobility. One of the key sort of commitments within the strategy is that we would look to establish a number of international placements with apprenticeships, with the new apprenticeships in the new system, and so one of the aspects of our Erasmus Plus bid, led by SWC, is around international placements and exchanges. We have a project looking at taking forward some work on a central service, and a central service will be a service which will provide, as well as promotion and opportunities for apprenticeships across the piece, it will also look to provide a service to employers to help them engage with the new system, and also then a service to apprentices and to prospective employers to help, or to prospective apprentices to help them engage with the new system, so that they know how to, who they need to be talking to, what they need to do, etc. So that project has been established. We have had some preliminary discussions with UCAS, who people, I'm sure that the members will be aware, the university application system, to see if we can develop a Northern Ireland portal that would set out all of the apprenticeship opportunities. And I suppose this really talks to our idea of trying to put apprenticeships on a par with traditional higher education as a route to higher level skills. So we've had some preliminary discussions around them about looking at whether we could establish some kind of Northern Ireland portal that would allow us then to advertise the full range of apprenticeship opportunities to young people and allow them to apply in the same way as they would if they were applying for a full-time university course. I've talked a little bit about the strategic forum and the subgroups. We've been looking at as well a project looking at how we fund individual apprenticeships going forward, and we have looked at a number of international examples of how we take forward funding and or how apprenticeships are funded internationally, and we'll reach some conclusions on those shortly and be testing our funding approach through the pilots that will be kicking off in September 2015. In terms of public sector apprenticeships, we've had some discussion with the PSNI and the Fire Service regarding the introduction of pilot public sector apprenticeships, but those haven't really materialised into sort of any firm or concrete proposals at this stage, but we remain hopeful. I think the key bit, and where we've seen significant progress, is around higher level apprenticeship pilots. We have been engaging with our colleagues in the further education sector, the 6 colleges and the 3 universities in the higher education sector, and working with them to try and identify opportunities for higher level apprenticeships to kick off. That will be apprenticeships at level 4, 5 in FE and level 6 and above in the universities. And we are sort of quietly confident, as part of our change fund bid, the 7.5 million I talked about earlier, we have an allocation within that where we think 400 to 450 pilot higher level apprenticeship places, which we're very confident that we'll be able to see kicked off from this September. And again, the purpose of those will be to help us test aspects of the new system and what we've set out in the new system. We have a few we have a number, about 150 higher level apprenticeship places currently going through or going on, and we're hoping for an additional 450 from this September. So we're quite confident our work with the colleges will deliver those numbers, or the colleges and the universities, I should say, in terms of that. And as I say, our intention is to test a range of options in terms of how we might deliver a lot of these things as we move forward. Again, looking at sector partnerships, I've talked a little about that. We have a number already established, and we're hoping to establish a few more in the areas that we've indicated there. And then again, coming back then to higher level apprenticeships and where we are in terms of the ones that we already have up and running are ICT professional services, engineering, life sciences and accountancy. And then, as I say, we've had a number of workshops and ongoing discussions with the key stakeholders, and we're seeing some progress there. At this point, I think, have I got one more slide? I don't think that's at this point, I'll pass over to Clem, who'll take you through the next little bit in terms of some of the other projects that we're taking forward.
Thank you, Philip, Chair and Committee. I'll just briefly provide an update on some of the remaining project areas. The Skills Barometer project has made significant progress. Engagement with stakeholders through consultation has been largely complete. This included our interim strategic advisory forum. We expect the first report to be available by September. It's just important to note that this is very valuable for apprenticeship policy as a whole, but also the wide range of our skills provision as we seek to make sure our provision matches the demand for skills in our economy. The Quality Project, our department's quality advisors are currently considering apprenticeships and defining what high quality provision looks like in every aspect of the apprenticeship journey. This includes initial advice and guidance, the progression, the facilities, the human resources that are available. Once we have defined what that quality model looks like, we'll then look at the full range of approaches to deliver it. Just to note, as you're aware, the current apprenticeship NI contracts are due to end, and so we have established a team in Skills and Industry Division who are leading what we're calling a transitions project to lead that process. Moving on to a new project that's been added to the programme around curriculum development. Both the apprenticeship strategy and the forthcoming youth training strategy that you were briefed on a couple of weeks ago have major implications for curriculum development in terms of the design process and the content. The content of curriculum is fundamental to support the breadth and rigour that we need to support the participants, the employer ownership, and a simplification of the awards and qualifications landscape. So this project will establish the design process for youth training and apprenticeships that supports these key principles, makes the most of our existing infrastructure, and works with some of the infrastructure Philip discussed earlier on. In order to meet this overarching aim, we're taking forward the project in 2 distinct phases. Phase 1 involves developing a series of pilots to test initially the mechanisms for the development of the new curriculum, and this will be supported by our Bid to the Change Fund. In light of the tight timescales between the youth training review that's due to be published and the commencement of the pilots in September, our main focus is on curriculum development, but obviously there's wider aspects that will be announced in the strategy, and where we can test those aspects in the short time, we will try our best to do so. The lessons from these first sets of pilots in Phase 1 will be crucial to informing the main and more substantive Phase 2, where we establish the new curriculum design process for Level 2 youth training and Level 3 apprenticeships to support the introduction of the new systems in 2016. Just quickly for Phase 1, we've adopted two main approaches to identify pilot opportunities. One is through engagement with our sectoral partnerships. We've been encouraging employers to come forward with new areas for apprenticeships or areas where new content could benefit that occupation. We've also had preliminary engagement with the FE sector, using their mature relationships with employers to try and identify new pilot areas again. As the review of youth training has not yet been published, these discussions have been on a preliminary basis and will be firmed up once we have the strategy agreed. We expect to receive pilot proposals over the next couple of months, which we will firstly consider in the department to ensure alignment with the principles in the strategy, and then pass to the sectoral partnerships for endorsement to make sure it meets the wider needs in terms of breadth and progression. You've got the final slide, the timeline of implementation. We've received an update on most of these aspects. So you'll see then that youth training will publish shortly, the skills barometer by September 15. In September, again, we'll be launching the full range of pilots for our new system. This is higher level apprenticeships, apprenticeships at Level 3 and youth training. We'll continue to test and develop new aspects of the model as we progress towards full introduction. And the final point to note is that you'll see we've got ongoing refinement and improvement down. In line with other countries, this isn't about landing a single product in September 16. If we're going to have a high quality world-class system, we'll need to constantly focus on refining and improving this model. So this is an ongoing process. It will be a focus for our department. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
So, Chair, we've reported quite a bit of progress, quite a few things already implemented, including the structures that Phil has outlined, and the sectoral partnerships that are very much employer-led, and many much work in progress in terms of things to be launched in September. So we're happy to take questions from.
Thank you for your presentation. Indeed, there's a lot in it. There's no doubt about that. But between now and the introduction of the scheme by 2016, there's quite a lot of work to be done yet on that. And again, with it being employer-led, are you satisfied with the input that you have from employers into the whole setting of the curriculum and the projects and all that will be taken forward in the pilot schemes and all that?
I think to date, yes. For the 3 sectoral partnerships that we have established, we have found that they are keen to be involved and coming forward with actual jobs and proposals for us to look at. So far, Phil.
Yeah, no, I think the level of engagement has been quite encouraging to begin with. I think it's worth noting that we have 150 pilot apprenticeships, higher level apprenticeships already underway, and that covers 50 different employers are offering those 150 places. So we're already seeing good levels of engagement from employers, and that's across a range of sectors. And certainly the discussions we have had with our universities and with our further education colleges would suggest that the discussions they're having out in the ground as well is we're seeing a number of new employers, I suppose, coming to the party in terms of the next stage in terms of the additional pilots that will be kicking off from September. Saying that, I think we do recognise there is a sort of a wider job of work to do in terms of encouraging greater participation by employers. And I suppose that's the function of one of the subgroups which we've established, is to look at how we might get better employer engagement and what support we might need to put in place to encourage more businesses and more employers to come forward, particularly amongst SMEs. I think has been a real focus, and that's what the group has really been taking us in terms of their discussions. They're sort of very keen that we focus in on how we might better engage small and medium-sized enterprises into the new system.
And working on this alongside the FE and the universities, have you any concern about the current funding pressures and how that might impact on this?
Obviously, we have secured change fund for the purpose of the pilots, and moving forward as we move towards a new model, we remain quietly hopeful that when the next comprehensive spending round comes along, that we will continue to have a budget for apprenticeships as we move forward. But we have actually ring-fenced additional money to actually test these concepts in what we would term a controlled environment. They test the robustness of the curriculum and how we might ensure that seamless progression as well, because and in rural settings as well as obviously in urban settings, and we have been very, very taken by the number of local employers in some of the rural areas who are participating. So we see this as very much a budget that will continue. We've always had apprenticeships, and we see ourselves continuing to have that. But as I say, this is additional pot of money to actually test this, so FE and further in higher education are able to benefit from that.
And how long is that money ring-fenced for?
We have been awarded change fund for 1 year, and we would then be continuing to bid through the executive, through the comprehensive spending review. Obviously, this is as we move towards the Department of Economy, we would expect that the appetite will be there to say this is a way where you can actually earn and learn and not be accumulating debt, and at the same time you can progress seamlessly right through to a level 8, and I think that we have already saw from our 150 higher level apprentices the real appetite for and the benefits of going through the higher level apprenticeship approach as an alternative but equally valuable route to progression in an organisation.
Just worth mentioning as well that apprenticeships, as part of our research, have been shown to deliver really big returns to the economy. So we're hopeful that the quality of the apprenticeship and the benefits to society and employers will make the case for continued investment.
Okay, thank you. Bronwyn?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. And I think apprenticeships is the way going forward, and potentially you might see a bigger uptick in them, with cuts to university places. I'm curious to know, the additional higher level progression routes which will become available from September, will that be in time for students currently going through the UCAS system? I'm just a wee bit concerned about that, that may not be ready in time for those students.
No, I think we're reasonably I suppose that the application will not be through the UCAS system for these pilots. It'll be starting in September, but certainly we'd be confident that they will be ready in September for students and for young people to apply for. We have been doing a lot of work with the FE colleges and with the universities. We have a number of proposals that we're considering at the minute, and we know that there's going to be a number of others coming forward. So that when I talk about 400 or 450, I'd be quite confident that we'd get those. But the application route then would be through either through the employer or through the FE college or through the university directly, rather than through UCAS at this time.
Although we will endeavour to have, at a micro level, a central service to support this in September, likely to be virtual, to give an opportunity for opportunities to be able to be accessed by young people who are interested in applying for a higher level apprenticeship. We are in discussions with UCAS. Those discussions will not be able to secure in time for September this initial series of pilots through that system, but we already know they have an appetite to work with us to have that, likely to be, I would say, for the next academic year, but we will work to secure that as soon as we possibly can.
Regarding the 150 apprenticeships, are they all the higher level?
The 150 higher levels that we have at the minute, they're all level 4, 5. They're primarily based on foundation degrees. As the core qualification, there's one, the accountancy one is based on a professional qualification and account technician's qualification. So they're all level 5. They all will lead to a level 5 qualification.
Okay. And could you provide a geographical breakdown?
Yeah, we can do that. We can indeed. We'll provide it in follow-up, but just to let you know there's 7 different apprenticeships across 5 subject areas. So the accountancy, there's 2 accountancy ones, and they're being run through Southern Regional College and BMC. There is an ICT one that's run through Southwest. There's 2 engineering, one through Northern Regional College and one through Southwest. Professional services apprenticeship is being run through BMC, and I've missed one. Life sciences is run through Southern Regional College.
And just to clarify, we see some of those existing higher level apprenticeships being extended right across Northern Ireland, with other colleges obviously recruiting where there are employment opportunities by local employers, and we already know we have some provisional indications coming forward for that, for new additional higher level apprenticeships from September, and it will see an expansion into many, as I say, both rural and urban areas right across Northern Ireland.
I think we're very confident that all 6 regional colleges and all 3 universities will be bringing proposals.
Okay, Anna?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, very sunny detail presentation. And I'm certainly very supportive of apprenticeship. I think it's a good way for young people to learn and get an experience at the same time. The structure seems very, very complex. Layers of, if you like, management, policy development, curriculum development, and you're saying you have the money from Change Fund, 7.5 million. Can you tell me how much money is spent on, say, the management and administration side, and how are you going to avoid being over-bureaucratic, and how are you going to achieve value for money in running this programme?
We actually wouldn't see the structures as being terribly bureaucratic. We have an advisory forum set up on an interim basis, meeting on a quarterly basis, high-level people giving of their time. The administrative support is certainly provided by our department, but it would be, I would describe it as very minimum in terms of cost. Likewise, the sectoral partnerships, as I said, were employer-led, and again, these are employers and employer-represented body giving of their time to come in and give advice on the appropriateness of a higher level apprenticeship coming forward. Both higher education and further education, this is part of their bread and butter job. So again, it's just a minimal amount of administrative costs for ourselves to provide secretariat support. So we actually see these structures, and the sectoral partnerships are tasked to finish. So we won't be having any partnerships if there are no jobs, because this is about actually looking at curriculum where there are occupations by local employers who have jobs to offer our young people. So we would see that as quite a low admin cost. And
yeah, no, I would echo that point. I think we have everybody who is involved and who has volunteered, and they are volunteered, so it's employers have given up their time freely to get involved, whether in the strategic forum or within the sector partnerships, and that's the approach that we have taken. And yeah, the administrative burden is nominal. Yeah, it's not.
So the 7.5 million would be going to colleges for the running courses, or?
There would be a policy administration cost in there, but the majority of the money would be going for delivery.
Yeah, the vast majority of the money is going. It's probably about 10% is in terms of admin, in terms of staff salaries and stuff like that in the department. The majority of the money is going to the pilot provision, and that's probably about sort of 5.6 million is going to pilot provision, or is set aside for pilot provision, whether that be it higher level apprenticeships, whether it be sort of normal apprenticeships at level 3, or whether it be the new youth training pilot. So that's the vast majority of the money is programme money, is targeted at actual delivery of apprenticeship pilots on the ground. That will primarily be routed through the colleges or the universities. We have said that we will fund the qualification, the core qualification, in the same way as that it would be funded if it was a full-time, or it would be funded if it was a mainstream, if people were getting the qualification through mainstream funding.
To cut down on bureaucracy, we're using existing funding mechanisms to channel the money to ensure that we don't add any additional administrative burden, so that where the colleges or the universities are delivering, the funding goes through their normal funding route in order to deliver. We're very mindful of the fact we need to be looking at doing this within that finite resource and making sure the bulk of the money is actually going to delivery of off-the-job training for people in employment.
Okay. So do they pay for course fees? They don't, do they? The student, I mean, the apprentice.
For a level 3 apprenticeship, we wouldn't expect them to, but at level 5 or at level 6, as I say, we would fund it on the same basis as we would fund a normal qualification, or a qualification sort of achieved through the mainstream route. So for the pilots, our proposal is that we would fund, that they would, either the apprentice or their employer would be expected to meet what would be broadly the student fee, tuition fee element of the qualification.
Okay. And to date, we have found that many of the employers participating have been willing to pay the tuition fee because the benefit to their company in terms of the learning and the skills that they're bringing back to the organisation.
Okay. They also pay the students, the apprentices.
But they pay
the
themselves
wages as well. Yeah.
The minimum legal wage, and in fact, many would be paying what we call the going rate for the job. And in areas like ICT, which are very sought after, obviously that wage would go up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, David.
Thanks, Sharon, and thanks for your presentation. Well, you said within the employers there was signs were quite encouraging. I think it was, you weren't saying enthusiastic or anything like that. So could you just clarify a wee bit more?
Oh, no,
Because through other traditional apprenticeships, I've seen employers let people down big time over the decades, I suppose. But
oh, well, if I could be more positive, then I probably should have been, yes. I suppose that's civil servant reserve, I guess. No, it has been very positive, as I say. We have started a number of pilot apprenticeships over the last sort of year, 18 months, and I think to already have 50 employers engaged in those pilots is a very, very encouraging sign. And as I say, I think we are getting new employers now starting to come forward as we move towards the new pilot. So hopefully we'll be able to, we'll be able to make those names known in the coming months as we move towards sort of the new pilots kicking off in September. Even I would say, in those three, and I talked about the sector partnerships we've established, and we have got people, employers are willing to come and sit and be involved in that. And it's a very encouraging, I think, state of affairs at the minute. What we can maybe do is share with you the names of the employers who are already involved in pilot higher level apprenticeships, and we could also then we'll share with you then the names of the employers who are involved in the sector partnerships and who've sort of stepped forward there as well. So that'll give you some idea. And I think when you see that, there are big companies, there are small companies, there's a range of companies involved, but we don't underestimate that there is a job to do in the longer term to really sort of try and really try and get employers engaged. And I suppose that's why we're starting small with a number of pilots, and hopefully that will, I think that the best way for getting employers engaged will be hearing the testimonials of other employers, if you like. And I think, and I think if we get these pilots right and we get more employers engaged, it'll start that sort of snowball effect as we move forward in the longer term.
I think the fact they're giving of their time to be on the sectoral partnerships, and indeed the advisory forum as well, that's giving of their time to actually give advice, and I have to say very constructive advice in terms of support for employers and how we might best go forward in terms of underpinning the components to make sure we distinguish between an apprenticeship as a system of learning rather than just normal on the job or training as part of employment, because they are two very distinct offerings.
no, it's good because you're speaking to somebody who comes with practical experience of these things over the last lot of years, so some bad experiences, I have to say. But at what stage then does a young person decide this is level 3 or is it A level, you're looking to go to university, or you're going to at what stage would a young person decide, where would they be signposted at to decide that this is what they want to do?
Okay, we are working, that's what part of the UCAS discussions are around, about looking at that advice and guidance. To me, I think in or around 16, a young person will be deciding once they finish their GCSEs whether they want to go down the pure academic route, and at that stage through that window to the world, as I would describe it, through that UCAS system. When we have it fully operational and the central service, there'll be opportunities to compare and contrast when they discuss their career aspirations, that the careers officer will be able to say, well, you can actually go through this route, through a higher level apprenticeship, or indeed at level 5 or level 6. Once you've your A levels completed, or even at GCSE level for the level 3. But this route and the qualifications and curriculum content when you work will allow you to progress at your own pace yourself if you choose, or if you move into a new role either in that organisation or another, you can progress right through the ladder. So we would see careers having a key part to play on that UCAS window to the world, in terms of those are the pointers when key decisions are made.
Can I maybe just add a little bit there and say, look, I suppose one of the things that the Minister is very keen to achieve is the sort of a movement between different routes. So it wouldn't necessarily be that somebody would make a decision, say at 16 or at 18, to go down the apprenticeship route, and they would stay in the apprenticeship route right up until level 6 or 8. That the Minister's keen, you would see perhaps people beginning full-time education, maybe getting a foundation degree, and then maybe moving to a higher level apprenticeship, get a job and study to complete their honours degree through an apprenticeship route, or vice versa. People might start out on the apprenticeship route, could earn their degree through an apprenticeship route, but then decide to maybe go to full-time education to do a master's or a PhD. And I think that sort of variation and movement between the routes.
Traditionally, a lot of the old style apprenticeships would have come from our areas of where probably social deprivation and areas of need and whatnot and stuff, and it would really need to be flagged up at a very early stage, I think, in a career pathway, allow people to sort of work themselves to that stage.
Yeah.
And I think at 14, through the youth training system, when we have it operational, the young person will even be making choices, I think, around 14 about their career aspirations. But as Phil has pointed out, that you don't have to pick anymore an either-or approach. You can have both, because the qualification and the learning will be recognised to allow you to seamlessly move back and forward, because you can move from your professional technical skills to the more academic route and vice versa.
Because we have a couple of generations there who have wanted to really get into engineering and other aspects of the traditional apprenticeships, and they're probably standing on manufacturing lines now, and they just feel let down by previous systems, so I wish you all the best with it. But,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Preferably being the Hayden one this.
Chair, thank you. And David touched on some of the issues I was going to raise, but thanks for the presentation. It was interesting. And I know that we got a presentation in youth training a couple of weeks ago. I'm still trying to get my head around what was said during that there. And sometimes you do get concerned. And whilst this committee actually has argued, obviously, for a better approach to careers and a better approach to apprenticeships, but we wouldn't like to see as a gap appearing between those on youth training, wanting to go on the apprenticeships, and those that go into further or high level apprenticeships. I think one of the concerns that there's a school in my constituency where we draw a lot of kids from the area I live and represent, and a number of years ago it was probably at the bottom level of achievements in GCSEs, with a change in leadership within the school. It's making inroads, and it goes from success to success on GCSEs. But how can you go? What happens when people achieve that success in those schools, and what's the connection between them, the school leadership, the department, and the people that provide apprenticeships to allow them to take that next step to go into the high level apprenticeships?
Okay. Well, you have been briefed, as I say, on the level 2 provision, and I maybe want to deal with your first point to alleviate your concern. We are developing curriculum at level 2, which Clement here is leading on the development of and the testing of, to ensure that it allows you to move seamlessly from that baccalaureate style qualification into an apprenticeship. So that's what this is about. It's about testing and making sure that a young person who has left school or has at school and has not achieved the full 5 GCSEs, that this will offer them the route to give them the building blocks that will be recognised to offer that seamless progression into apprenticeship, straight into a job if that's what they desire, or into more further education if they want to go through the academic route. Talking about the success of the school and what happens to the young person if they have been successful, and you talked about the school in your own area, we are working closely with the Careers Review and our Careers College, our colleagues, to make sure that through the UCAS system and through their advice and guidance, that these opportunities for apprenticeships, including higher level ones, are articulated to young people, and that they can see that they have a number of alternatives and of equal value in terms of moving to where their career aspirations are and where the jobs are going to be.
See, I think one of the things David had said, that there are young people there that aspire to much more than a job, and it's the type of job that they want to go into, and that obviously what you're saying seems exciting at a level, but it's how you move those young people from just having the aspiration into the high-level apprenticeships that is available. And how you encourage them. Now, the schools can do so much, but there has to be a connection there between what the department's offering and what the school has offered or has taken it to.
And there's no better ambassador than some of the young people themselves. And I have to say, for some higher level apprenticeships, particularly I think, and I'm thinking of financial services now, Phil, and you can correct me on that, where young people themselves have been out and went back to the school they came from as ambassadors, say, I've went through this, I am performing at a level equivalent to a graduate, I'm doing really well in the organisation, and this particular school, nearly all the young people came forward and applied the next year, so I think there's an element of that as well. There's nothing like the school to have the ambassadors to actually say, look where I am now, I came through this route, this opportunity has got me, and I'm now thinking of moving on in my learning. This model meets two needs. It obviously meets the needs of the employer, but it also meets the aspirations of the young person, because we give them something of value to allow them that if they at a later stage choose to leave that job or move into a different area, they have got the value of the qualification to actually allow that movement.
Throughout our engagement with young people, I met some individuals who school basically didn't really work for them, but they joined a link to work style programme, really developed an enjoyment of qualifications and learning, and it raised their aspirations just by being part of the programme. They progressed on to level 3 apprenticeships in engineering, and now they're looking at higher level apprenticeships. I think once you're part of this programme and the system, you will get advice and guidance and pastoral support that guide you towards the full range of choices that you have if you want to progress.
See, and there for me is the crux of the matter, and that is in the past that has been available for certain schools at a level, but many of the schools that some of us would represent have been left behind, and it's how you take all schools and offer them the same opportunities. Because if you don't, then what you're doing is you're doing what Davy said, people stand on a line, angry about being left behind and the thing, and it's trying to get that connection. And it would be interesting to, at some stage, because I would like to say how do the department monitor it, how do they know if it's successful, how do they look at the stuff that Bronwyn brought up on the geographical spread of how this is dealt with. There are many people out there who will not be academically gifted, but have a lot more to offer in terms of other routes that they may go down.
And we are developing content and curriculum to allow that progression, and we have some money that we will be using to try and help market and brand and promote. We will be working with UCAS to do that, and we will also be working with our colleagues in the Careers Service through their Career Review to join this all up, so that we could all listen. No matter what school in Northern Ireland you go to at 14, you really can see what the full range of choices are, and that, more importantly, I think than anything, that whether it is this route or the academic route, each are of equal value, and allow that progression and recognise that professional technical specialism, which is every bit as valuable as the core academic. So that we're working very closely, as I say, with our curriculum experts in further and higher education to secure that progression.
Sure, is there a possibility, and it's just taking that all in, because I think one of the difficulties you've had in the past is how it's monitored and how it's delivered, and is there a possibility at some stage in the future that we can go to schools, some schools, and look at how that is put into practice.
That's fine.
I'm sure that's something that we can work with the clerk of the committee on. Yeah. Okay, Claire?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for your presentation. I only wish we had apprenticeships in political kind of arena, because I know I certainly didn't learn this job until I actually started doing it.
On your feet. On your feet.
I suppose you've already answered this, but I'm kind of curious, are these apprenticeships, will they have the same value as certain qualifications, in that they could be even prerequisites to degree courses if need be? I'm thinking sort of UCAS, A-levels, GCSEs, and will those be recognised even in the mainland as well? Yeah.
And I'm going to pass to you a second. We would be looking through UCAS at the possibility of adopting a tariff system, so the qualifications eventually. And I mean, there is, I'm not going to mislead the committee, there's quite a bit of work in all of this, but as we move, there's no reason why we couldn't work on a tariff system with the qualifications signed off by the further and higher education institutions to ensure that the value of the qualification allows through the tariff system that seamless progression, so that it is what is seen as a value as 5 GCSEs at A to C will have a tariff point system the same as what 5 GCSEs A to C would have. So that's what we're trying to work through. And Clement, I'll hand over to you maybe for a bit.
Yeah, I've uncovered the main aspects there. There's two sides to this. At level 3, qualifications that are regulated have a certain score and a tariff. When we add the range of qualifications together that will be offered in these new apprenticeships, it should give a guide as to what that will allow progression to across the full range of UK universities. That's a valuable tool. At a local level, higher education representatives are part of our sectoral partnerships. So you'll be asking them to give us advice and guidance on, does this combination at a level 3 at apprenticeship support progression into your institution? So that hopefully gives us, a good steer both locally and on a UK-wide basis. But it's something that we'll be continuing to work on and focus on as we move through the implementation.
We are using the foundation degree in the main, as Phil said earlier, for that level 4, level 5 qualification, because it gives clear and seamless progression through to translate into an honours degree if the person so wishes. So, and as we move backwards to the other levels, that's how we will be building this, to make sure that it allows that progression to move into the next stage seamlessly.
Do you almost envisage these apprenticeships as full courses, or could they even be like modules that make up a degree or anything like that?
I think it's important to look at apprenticeships, particularly higher level apprenticeships, as a route to a qualification and not a separate qualification.
Okay.
So you will get the same qualification. Our ambition, our aim is that you would get the same qualification. So you could perhaps go to university full-time and earn your degree, or you could go and do an apprenticeship through an employer. It would probably take you a little bit longer because you'd be obviously only studying part-time, but the qualification, we should aim for the qualification to be the same, and apprenticeships just to be thought of as a route to a qualification as opposed to anything.
And to add to that, if I may, through our new model, we are no longer operating on a system that will be 4 days on the job and 1 day off the job. The new model will allow for block training, and at those higher levels, that's quite likely what the employer will want, where they'll actually go full time and then come back into the employed route, and we won't have any stipulation that you must be 4 days in a job and 1 day off. Whatever the employer wants, we will deliver.
And could you almost add the two together? I know, like, if you have a master's, you have so many points, but then if you do your dissertation, you get your postgraduate diploma, and then if you do your dissertation, you get your master's. So could you almost add your apprenticeship to your qualification and get a master's instead of a BA?
You could, if we get this right. And I just want to caution, it's all development policy work, but it's really, really exciting. And if we really are successful this time, we really could see a sea change in terms of our young people in Northern Ireland, that they all come out with something of value that allows them to progress. Because while everybody wants to aspire to have a job, you want to aspire to have a job where you can actually be the chief executive at someday if you have the ability and choose to.
Okay, Sidney?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. You actually touched on the point I was going to ask Steve on there just a few seconds ago. It's about block education. Instead of, say, 4 days working and 1 day off, how much would you see the employers buying into like that, saying maybe 2 or 3 months block education going to our...
Based on discussions to date, we already know they have an appetite, particularly in some of the sectors like ICT, to name up one. Sorry, Philip.
I was just say it will entirely be in the employer's hands. They'll be the ones that will decide. They are the ones that will develop and agree what the apprenticeship will look like with the relevant training providers. So if they want to do, maybe the first 6 months completely training at, say, a college or university, and then move to maybe a 4 days on, 1 day off. That's entirely it's entirely within their control, I suppose, would be the point. And I think, as Yvonne says, we have seen some indications that that certainly that employers in particular sectors may be more. It might work better for employers in particular sectors to have that sort of block training approach as opposed to that sort of traditional 4 days on, 1 day off approach. But we'll see, and we're open to any proposals as they come forward at this.
I think you touched on employers maybe paying some tuition fees. Did you touch on that? What at the end can we see when a young person goes right through, say, their education and their training, apprenticeship? There's a job there at the end with that employer. Are you seeing that coming from the employers to say, look, we want to see this young person go right from A to Z, where they're employed by us? They have had a big input into that.
The research
program.
that we have and the evidence base that informed our policy shows that the win-win for the employer is that they are getting the higher level skills, but the return on investment, particularly at the year 2 of the apprenticeship, is such that they get someone who is actually skilled to their business as well, and the likelihood is that that employer will want to hold on to them. Indeed, even some organisations, I went to one organisation where they actually had a series of former apprentices who have now moved into management roles in the company. But that said, if the job wasn't there at the end, the individual now has the qualification that the world's their oyster. They can move on somewhere else, and they've got a passport if they move into a new role to even gain that higher level. So I don't think we will be fixated anymore about whether it is permanent forever and a day, because as long as we get the qualifications and the content right,
Can that young person, say, taking a job with a company today, see a pathway to finally say, I can end up with a degree level or with this right through? From beginning, they know where they can set their sights and say, look, that's where I want to be with the help of the apprenticeship training and the education.
That is exactly right.
I think that
they can see that clear pathway.
That is the objective that we have as part of this new system, is that they'll be able to do that. Obviously, the existing system's still running through at the minute, but that would be the objective, that we would, somebody who come in and maybe start at a level 3 apprenticeship would be able to see a clear pathway right up to level 7 and 8 if they wanted to go that far.
And there are 2 beneficiaries. There's the beneficiaries, obviously, that individual and their aspiration, but also the employer in terms of the return on investment for the skills that person brings to their organisation and the on-the-job training they get with the organisation to work with the knowledge that they've gained from the off-the-job training to actually make the organisation be more productive, and obviously even things like lean manufacturing. So there's really, really good opportunities. And I do want to emphasise this. While budgets are finite, and we're certainly in a difficult situation at the moment, I think we need to be mindful that we're a young person in an apprenticeship, the job, heaven forbid, would end. If they move into a new role in the same company, they will be allowed through this system to continue in an apprenticeship at the higher level or in a new organisation or a new job. So that, I think, adds great value to the individual, and I think to a degree will deal with some of the points you've been making.
I think, just quickly to finish, the evaluation of your pilot, the evaluation of these projects, I think that's going to be important as well. That those issues are ironed out quite early in the process, and say the pilots and all settled down, you can see clearly where it's going. But I think that's important.
Absolutely. We've had some preliminary discussions with some of our sector partnerships, or some of the members of our sector partnerships, how we might capture the sort of the key lessons and how we might share that more widely, because I think if we can sort of show, I hope, the benefits of the system and that the system works well, and that it sort of links into that bit about both young people and employers and how we might sort of engage more of them. If we're showing to show that these pilots are working and that they're having a positive impact on the company and on the young person, that hopefully then that'll be, those good messages will come out, as well as us learning about what we might do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Do you foresee a problem where you will be oversubscribed by applicants?
that would be the role of the employer to select. In fairness, like any job, we have to keep in mind an apprenticeship is an employment opportunity, and like all employment opportunities, the employer will ultimately decide. If we're very successful, that may well be a measure of our success.
It's a good problem, if I might add. In Germany, that's one of the main challenges they have in their system, is maintaining the number of places to match demand, because everybody knows once you've got that apprenticeship place, you can get a job right across the economy. You can progress right to the top of that occupation. So in many ways, that would be
A barometer of success.
us succeeding. And then the challenge is to look at the advisory panel and ask them, how do we create more opportunities to try and provide more growth and development?
Yeah, but if a situation like that arises, does that not create the concern where the person who's the lowest educated, if you like, that they're going to be dropping off at the end, and the person that is the higher level of education is going to be taken on? So you're going to be left in a scenario maybe where those from, as David was talking earlier, from the most deprived areas are going to be cast to the side, if you like, while the others with the greater educational needs going to be taken forward. How do you propose to address that issue?
For each level, from entry level right through, there will be obviously entry criteria, and every young person will have their level 2, either their GCSEs or the baccalaureate. We will make sure that they have the opportunity to get that. We would deem that to be almost the ticket for a young person into employment, is the equivalent to those 5 GCSEs. That's what our review that Carol McGill, my colleague, reported to you on a few weeks ago. So we actually don't see this as being, each stage you will move and you will gain the qualification to allow you access. Employers are not known to select only on everybody applying for the job will have a similar level of qualification which they will set, and they will choose and distinguish between those. And normally, for the professional and technical end, they will be looking at a series of skills and measuring those employability skills, for example, teamwork. So I wouldn't really accept that it just would be solely the academic performance of somebody will dictate whether they move to apprenticeship. Remember, there'll be an interview and there'll be testing, and jobs at the moment, as you'll be aware, a number of them have different series of tests. Those tests are set so that you can look at a wider skill set than just the academic performance.
When you engage with some of our big employers, they always emphasise that one of the reasons they're attracted to youth training and apprenticeship style models is that it gets them greater social diversity into their company, so their workforce represents the actual communities that they're working with. So I do recognise that it could be a challenge someday, and we'll obviously try and address that, but I would say apprenticeship style learning is key to providing these pathways that support a greater range of participants.
Yeah, I hear what you say, but I think we still need to be mindful of the fact that there could be an element of people there that could be falling off, if you like, the end, because the employers are choosing who they want and they're being oversubscribed. The other issue you talked about was progressing from level 3 to level 4 to level 5. Now, if I'm an apprentice and I go to a company and I'm at level 3 and maybe get to level 4, maybe that company, there's no further, or I can't progress from level 4 any further or from level 3 any further, because it's not every business or every employer that's going to have the person moving on from level 3 to level 4. They'll bring them to level 3 and there's no further progression there for them. How is that matter going to be addressed?
And that is a matter of choice. We need to be careful here. What's in the apprenticeship for the young person or the adult apprentice is they can choose to do that of their own, they can choose to they can remain in the job, there is no progression in it, and that's perfectly fine. But if they aspire to achieve further, they could decide to go through further education to gain further education qualifications at a higher level themselves, as is the case with continuing education if they choose, and they may choose to leave that company, and that is certainly a risk, but that is how the labour market works.
I think that's the key point there to make is that obviously the apprenticeship would give them a qualification that is recognised not just in their company but across the sector. So they would have the ability, if there was an opportunity perhaps in another company to move on to higher levels, then they have the basic qualification to be able to access that opportunity. And I think that's the sort of the whole idea of progression and mobility, and why we've built that sort of in as a sort of a key component of the strategy.
As Yvonne mentioned, they could progress just to full-time mainstream education, but with the benefit of having 2 or 3 really good commercial years of experience, which actually gives them something extra that perhaps people who've taken the mainstream pathway don't have.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation and for taking the questions.
Yeah.
And maybe whenever...
Can I just make a quick
Sure,
comment?
sure, Anna.
Chair, lots of good questions. Just a comment on, after talking to some young people in apprenticeship, I mean, they were saying to me they feel more motivated when they're in a job and then going to get a qualification or going to college and on day release or whatever, because they find the learning in college is relevant to their day-to-day job, and I think that's a big push for young people then to get on.
And they see the links, and the universities have built up really good links with employers, and you know, there's really, really good opportunities here, even for some of our students who are actually in both further education and higher education, that if they secure a sandwich here or work experience, that could actually transpire into a job. This is all about jobs and about growing the economy and making sure our young people get really good work-based learning opportunities and good quality provision to learn, allow them to progress, that they have a ticket to higher levels if they wish.
Okay, again, thank you for your presentation and taking the questions. And maybe when you're keeping the committee informed of who the employers are, you could also keep committee up to date as to who's actually on the advisory forum.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
no problem.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to our next presentation, a briefing from the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People. I want to welcome, welcome Kula Yashmer, maybe that is, Commissioner for Children and Young People, and Mairead McCafferty, Chief Executive from Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People. Very, very welcome to committee today, and we're going to have to ask you to be as brief as possible because we're running tight for time.
Thank you very much. You're asking me to be brief. That's a huge challenge, but of course...
We know that.
So let's start as we mean to go on. I'm very happy to be brief and very happy to pick up on the conversation you've just had about our most disadvantaged young people, but just by way of saying thank you for the invitation to come and speak to you today. Some of you will know that in my previous life as Director of Include Youth, I did a lot of work. The organisation did a lot of work around young people who need education, employment and training. So this is an issue very, very close to my heart. I'm very happy to have a conversation with you, Mairead and I, to have an open conversation. We've sent through a briefing paper, just very quickly to give you a couple of bullet points about some of the things that we would like the committee to consider. As this is the first time I've been before you as the Commissioner for Children and Young People, just to remind you what we're about. That we have a range of powers and duties, but the main one is to promote and safeguard the rights of children and young people. But what that actually means is keeping under review the adequacy and effectiveness of law, practice and services, advising government on various children's issues, promoting an understanding of children's rights and best interests, and bringing and assisting or intervening in any legal proceedings. Yeah. Again, to find relevance to this committee, the remit of our office is any child up until the age of 18, except if they are either disabled or have been looked after, and then I have responsibility for them up until the age of 21. Following on from the previous conversation that you were having around apprenticeships, I do want to talk to you about young people who need education, employment and training, and particularly the implementation of this strategy, Pathways to Success, which I know that this committee has taken a huge interest in. And I have been around in this field for a very long time to know that Pathways is as a direct result of the work of this committee. And Tom, you've been around as long as I have around this, and that it was the very helpful inquiry that this committee ran, which then followed through by what I would say was a very inclusive and successful consultation exercise that brought about a very good, robust strategy that was cross-cutting across government, and that the executive put its name on, rather than recognising that if we're going to get young people into the first rung of employment, education or training, that we need to do a range of cross-cutting issues. Let's not forget where we are today, though. The last month's figures from the Labour's Force survey show that 21.8% of our 18 to 24-year-olds are economically inactive. Whilst this figure may be decreasing, it's still considerably higher than the UK average, which is 14%. So if I was giving our government a grade or a report, writing a report, as many teachers are today, writing a report on its performance, I would say could do better. And one of the ways I think it could do better, and it speaks to the point that you made, Farah, to the previous around apprenticeship, is implementation, evaluation and monitoring of a strategy such as Pathways. Pathways was introduced in June 2012. Since then, there's been no implementation plan or progress report in the public domain. We don't know. We don't know what actions have happened. We don't know and how they have been assessed with regards to progress. That's 3 years ago, almost to the day actually, that Pathways was published. It's fair to say that when Pathways was introduced, some of the initiatives got a fair start because there was an additional money came across the water through Barnett and through Delivery Social Change. And on the 29th of April, the Minister told you that he said it has been clear for quite some time that the particular funding package for the delivery of the Pathways to Success strategy has not been renewed. We cannot underestimate the impact that austerity is going to have on the implementation of a strategy such as Pathways. But Pathways is a strategy set for 2020. What I would like for it to see is to be obviously to be reviewed and revised in light of reducing resources, but there are no resources. And what I would remind everybody is that the aspiration identified in this strategy, that by 2020 every young person will not only have an opportunity to access education and training, will not only have an opportunity to access education, training and other preparation for employment, but to the extent that they are able to, will also avail of that opportunity. That is as true now as it was 3 years ago. And I would urge that the path stays and that certain revisions are made to make sure Pathways to Success. Pathways to Success cannot be reduced to a number of standalone initiatives. It's a whole. So there are a number of other lost opportunities with Pathways that I'm happy to and just a headline. I'm not going to go on about Pathways EMA. I think that was a benefit that was born of this committee. It was this committee that took a motion to the floor of the Assembly, and it was this committee that pushed the department to have EMA training allowance for young people on that very first rung of the ladder into their employment, education and training career. And I do not find acceptable the reasons why EMA has been withdrawn from young people, from the 2,500 young people who have availed of it. This committee has spent a lot of time looking at the European Social Fund, and again, I'm not going to go on, but I would like to applaud the work you have done in that area and remind you, which you already know, the job's not done. Also, I would ask this committee to have a serious look at the process of the implementation of the United Youth funding and progress. United Youth was announced, as you know, as part of the TBUC work in June 2013. To date, the only money spent on services to young people has been in the very well-evaluated pilot of Head Start. And as of the end of last week, we still hadn't, the projects who had applied for that funding had still not heard whether they were pilot projects. My understanding is that funding is due to run out next year. And then just to quickly move on to the work that you are doing around young people with special educational needs and how that dovetails into obviously the SEND bill that's going through this Assembly at the moment. The UNCRC Article 28 requires that the state encourages the development of different forms of secondary education, making them accessible to each child. And this is further enhanced by requirements set on by the UN Convention on the Rights for People with Disabilities, which elaborates by saying that a state has to ensure an inclusive education system at all levels of lifelong learning. It is of some concern to me that when I was looking at this, that if a child has a statement of educational need, as long as they stay in a special school or in a Department of Education provision, for want of a better term, until the age of 19, that statement is legally enforceable. The minute that child moves to an FE or another provision, that statement is no longer enforceable. That can't be right. We need to take the services have to follow that child and young person to where they are best educated and have their education needs met. And just by way of an example, Nikki had through its legal service a young man who transferred to an FE course at the age of 16 because that was deemed to be the best thing for him. In his statement, it was very clearly stated he was entitled to full-time classroom assistance, which included during unstructured times, moving in between lessons, during break times and during lunch times. However, when he moved to FE, he was told that he could only get assistance during structured times, which meant that his father had to go into the college during the break times and during the lunch times to sit and supervise his son. How is that fair? How is that in the best interest of the young person? So I would certainly, and we will be giving evidence to the Education Committee in a couple of weeks, would absolutely be advocating that the statement follows the child and that the statement goes with the child, with the young person up until the age of 21 in accordance with our legislation. The other thing that I'm concerned about is this, that a child, particularly whether they need education, employment and training and have family and come from disadvantaged areas, or whether they have a special educational need, that it's not, we need to move away from this siloed. It's not education, it's not FE that will meet their needs, it's a holistic approach, and there needs to be a coordinated plan, particularly with health, but also with justice and other departments. And I am very, very concerned, and as are my colleagues at Nikki, that going through the SEND bill, that there's not a duty upon health and education, particularly to cooperate and deliver a coordinated service to these young people. I am optimistic that once you have passed, this Assembly has passed the Children's Services Cooperation Bill, that issue will be alleviated. And finally, I am around long enough to remember the last time the executive had proposed doing away with the Department of Employment and Learning, and at that time we were very concerned around how the department was going to be carved up. I appreciate that it's definitely going to happen now, and I would endorse the notion that we need less departments, probably. What I would ask is certain considerations around this group of young people that we've talked about today, that they don't get lost in a department for the economy, and that maybe should go into the education department. And that's not brief, but it's brief for me, yeah. Chair, if I could be so bold.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Maria, do you understand anything? Are you happy enough?
No, I'm happy to answer questions and just contribute as I go on, Tom. I know you're pressed for time.
Okay, well, thank you again for your presentation today. And you have highlighted, and by the way, just at the commencement, can I congratulate you on the new role that you've taken on?
Thank you.
Commissioner for Children and Young People, and I know that you will fulfil that role very, very well.
Hoping.
You have highlighted today some of the gaps and barriers that exist, and again, this is why the committee has been carrying out this inquiry into post-SEN, because of the difficulties that the committee saw and members on the committee, the difficulties that they saw and experienced within their own constituency and sometimes even within their own families. What's your view on the whole transition period from moving from one place to another? That's one of the things that one of the difficulties perhaps that the committee has encountered in some areas, maybe not in all areas, but in some areas, whenever we've been out looking at different.
You go and then I'll jump in.
Nikki produced a transitions report just 2 years ago, and I think we actually spoke to the committee then about it. And there is that concern around the whole transition plan, if you like, for young people transitioning from education into the next stage in their careers, if you like. One of the things that was apparent was the fact that it could be a postcode lottery, depending on where the young person lived. There was also the issue of a lack of coordination between health and education and the various departments in terms of the plan that would have to be in place for that young person, and particularly because we're talking about a cohort of young people who are very vulnerable. As the Commissioner has already outlined, it is the case that these young people who have special educational needs will have statements, or may not necessarily have statements, but do require additional support services to be in place. And if we don't get the plan correct, and if we don't have an onus of responsibility on the departments to work together, which we currently don't have, then it's not going to be as effective as it should be. One of the most important things I think that we have to focus on are the outcomes for our children and young people across the board. And that is inclusive of those children and young people who may have special educational needs. And there are varying degrees of that, as you will be aware. So it is very important that we look, and it goes back to, I think, the point that was made previously with the contributions from the DEL officials. How do we monitor, how do we implement, and how do we make sure that the outcomes for our children and young people are what we want them to be? And how can we make it more effective? Because currently, obviously, there are gaps there that we've identified. And I'll not go into more of the detail. I'm aware that the committee has a copy of the report. And certainly the recommendations that were in it are something that we've been pushing forward on since then as well.
And it goes back to what we said about about extending the age to 21 for these young people and families, because they are describing sometimes falling through the gaps, between the ages of 19 and 21. And if we extend our statutory responsibility to them up until the age of 21, then that may smooth the transition a little bit.
Can I just add as well, and it's something that the Commissioner and I were actually discussing earlier. One of the most effective things that could actually happen here to help these young people would be that the statement follows the pupil. It isn't a case of having a silo approach, which we currently have, as in the statement stays with the young person while they're in with the responsibility under the remit of DE, and then once they transition into the remit of another department, that's gone. If there was a process in place where the statement followed the pupil, then the provision and the services that child requires would still be there, regardless of where they're receiving their education. I mean, one of the things that actually was apparent through the transitions report was sometimes the provision that happens is not consistent across the board, and some young people were accessing better provision than others, and again, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, where the statement needs to follow the pupil, because whenever it stops, then it causes huge problems. I thought the other issues where committee would be keen that obviously it would go to 25 rather than 21.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that the committee is looking at in their inquiry. Any other questions?
Chair, yeah.
Oh, no.
I mean, I concur with absolutely everything that they're saying. I mean, I have had meetings with parents in my constituencies. They've cried their tears, limited opportunities, all of that. I know that there has been a lot of money pumped into the transition processes. However, with the best will in the world, there's still nowhere for those kids to go in terms of employment, in terms of opportunities at FE colleges, and while, some provision does exist, it's very poor. Even with a coordinated approach, how then do we increase those opportunities?
It is, you're right, and it is for all the young people we've talked about. who don't reach certain educational milestones at the age of 16. You know, the 5 GCSEs that everyone, whether they're what we call NEETs or whether they're, that we do need to have proper provision. And I know there was some discussion on the floor yesterday, which was about, is every child at 16 or when they need it being offered, as Europe is requiring us to do? And the answer is no, they're not. And what are we doing to make that happen, to have realistic, you know, I'm always a bit sceptical about work schemes because they're transient and they're not part of the mainstream economy. But there is a lot of work still to be done to make sure that we are offering genuine and sustainable offers, and that young people, whether they're, you know, whether the young people considered NEET or these young people are not victims to short-term faddy funding, as we'll call them, and that they are getting sustainable opportunities. And as Mairead says, it's not a postcode lottery.
Last week we had a presentation from somebody within the health service, and if you go through their presentation, they talk about provision, but it's provision related to every other department bar health.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that's even, you know, doing meetings in my own constituency, facilitating meetings between the local health trust and parents. As far as they were concerned, it's not our statutory duty to talk about education, and that's where you're constantly hitting the brick wall, and it's so frustrating, and you don't get anywhere with it.
And there you've given us an excellent example of why we need the Children's Services Corporation Bill that's currently being discussed by the committee of OFM, DFM, because even in a small jurisdiction like Northern Ireland, we are working very much to silos, and children's lives, particularly children with additional or special educational needs, they don't work in silos. You know, particularly if a child with a disability, they often, not always, often have health needs, and that needs to be coordinated to get the best outcome.
Sorry, I was just going to add as well, and following on from what Ciarla's saying. One of the things that we found when we were conducting the research in relation to transitions was the fact that sometimes you have daycare provision in some areas, and that's very good. In other areas where it is provided, the level of education and the level of training that's there is practically non-existent. And I know a lot of this goes back to issues of resources and goes back originally to your point, Bronwyn. And if we are allocating resources, let's look at how we do that more effectively. And let's look at how we allocate them to the front line, where they're needed and where they're going to impact on the children and young people, and where they're going to make a difference to the lives of children and young people as well.
Okay, sure. And following on what you had said, and we have been out and about, especially as part of the inquiry, looking at quite a lot of places, and they always, to start these, we utterances from myself and saying that it's amazing the wealth of experience, talent and love that there is out there in many of the schools across the north. But it also, and it comes from teachers, parents, but you get to a stage there coming close to 18 where it actually terrifies parents and others, because in many ways the silo mentality exists. You know that there's no coordinated approach that takes people through that transition, and I think that's one of the reasons why parents and some teachers have been arguing for to take it through to 25. But I think one of the things that had concerned us is the people that are going through now and they end up in a day centre, and what is an offer? There's no stimulation, there's no thought put into it, and many parents tell us that they just refuse to send their children to the thing. Have you engaged with the department or anybody else in terms of day centres? You know, I think one of the ones that we went into was like an old Victorian building, and it was terrifying to think that this is the type of service that we're offering people. But how do we offer the parents some hope that things are going to change, especially when you still look at places like that?
I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of, and Ciarla's already alluded to this, you know, the SEND bill that is currently undergoing the legislative passage at the minute and going through the process. Clause 8.13 of that actually states that the special education needs statement should extend beyond the 19th birthday of the child. And this goes back to the assertion that we need to make sure that that statement follows the child wherever they then progress on to. One of the issues as well in the past has been that the number of transitions officers in education library boards is woefully inadequate. Now we have the Education Authority, there is an opportunity here, hopefully, to not only increase the number of transitions officers, but to make it real and much more meaningful in the lives of those children and young people, so that the schools, before the young person is actually transitioning, will have an effective transition plan in place, and we'll sit down with the parents around the table and we'll do the review and we'll look at the progression routes that are possible for that child based on the needs of that child and the capacity and abilities of that child. Because at the end of the day, this is about us taking our responsibilities as adults in this society seriously. So if we do that effectively, then that is what parents could possibly cheer at, I would imagine, certainly listening to the parents that we've listened to as well.
And we will just raise the issue due to have meetings, hopefully, with certainly Minister Farrier and Minister Hamilton, and it's something we'll raise, because that was the very reason why the NICI legislation went to 21 for this group of young people, to make sure that they were getting their needs met. I
think, Chair, the other frightening thing is the amount of young people at primary school who are a statement that are suffering from ADHD, who are suffering from autism or anything. And I don't know where it's just in Belfast, I think, but I know that from one of the schools that I would be involved in, the difference between statement and a report from the child psychologist, and it poses difficulties and problems for.
And this is one of the reasons as to why, and obviously we'll be up speaking to the Education Committee in a couple of weeks' time around this as well, but this is why it's so important for the statement to contain and be more specific about the actual support services that have to be in place for that child, and to quantify the amount of support that they can provide for that child as well, because what we have found, and certainly speaking to colleagues who work in the children and young people sector as well, we have found that some of the statements are not specific enough. They're very general and very open to interpretation, and certainly then are not effective in meeting the needs of that child in the school environment. Because you're right, there are schools across the whole of Northern Ireland where there are very high levels of special educational needs, and again, those young people who actually have the statements. So it is very much about looking at how do we do that, how do we specify the support they need, and how do we make sure that that's effective at the point of need.
Okay, Bronwyn?
Yeah, just very quickly, on the back of Fra's point regarding young people who've had a diagnosis of being autistic. Recently, within my own constituency, I've had 2 parents who've had to actually go private to get that diagnosis, despite the fact that they have raised concerns with their teachers. Their kids would have been put out of the classroom for being naughty, and so on and so on. And some of them, aren't working, and have had to gather up the money to go private. And I know one of the kids is sitting actually in P7, and while she's got a diagnosis, we're being told now that there's a potential 9 months delay in her being referred to the Autistic Assessment Centre, and which means that she's going into secondary school with potentially no classroom assistance and so on.
There is an issue, Bronwyn, around private diagnoses, because our understanding is the Education Library Board doesn't, or the new education doesn't recognise it as a diagnosis, but you need to have one of their one of the systems. Assessment from the system.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that the parents weren't taken seriously until they had to go and get it action themselves. But now the school is taking it serious because it's there in black and white.
There's still a delay.
Yeah. But they still won't recognise it
until they've actually got.
And we have had, and we do, as Coola's already said, we do have a legal investigations department in a lot of the cases that we have. 40% of the caseload that we have on an annual basis, and even last year, was around special educational needs. And we had a number of cases in relation to educational psychology reports, and parents having to go and pay for those privately. Very often in circumstances where they couldn't afford them, and we're struggling to do that. And then the Education Library Board didn't recognise them as such, and we have actually engaged with the Education Library Board directly to progress that and move that on. But I do think it's a situation that the Education Authority as a whole needs to be looking at more effectively, because we were told there weren't enough educational psychologists, and then we were concerned that parents felt that there was almost a quota system being operated in schools. Now we've been told that's not the case, But at the same time, I mean, we were hearing of delays at one point up to 18 months. I mean, that's a year and a half out of a child's life. Their educational careers already adversely impacted, and how do you catch up with all of that? So this is something that we're obviously taking up with the Education Authority when we meet those. But it is very much the key to looking at making sure that the SEND legislation is currently going through, and the code of practice and the regulations, which will actually spell out the details more effectively, will actually address that very issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming along to committee, giving your presentation.
Chair, again, sorry,
Anna,
quick comment.
sorry, we're
Just
on time.
Raymond, to congratulate the good work
Well, thank
of
you.
the Commission. You've done an awful lot in the last, 8, 9 years since you established, and raising really awareness of the rights and the needs of children.
Absolutely.
Very well done.
And to reiterate, I just want, to congratulate the committee on its work on both these issues. And, I would very much applaud the scrutiny you gave around ESF particularly, and just recommend that ask you to keep it going, particularly around the implementation of pathways, how SEN is going to, transition. But also, what's happened with your initiative around EMA, Pathways EMA, which up until yesterday was still on the department's website as a benefit young people could access. So just to commend you for that and tell you, this is a mutual love in here. To keep up the good work.
Makes a change, please.
I know. I'll be back to have a look.
Okay, then, folk, thank you very much for your presentation, taking questions, and again, we'll commend you on the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Sure. Members, any other business? No other business. The date and time of the next meeting will be Wednesday, 17th of June at 10 a.m. in room 29. And I would remind members that next week the committee will be on a visit to Hawthorns Daycare Centre in Carrick as part of their ongoing inquiry into post-special educational need provision in Northern Ireland.
Didn't know why you said Carrick or Carry there.
That's it. So we'll see you all there.
Chair, can I send my apologies now for that? I'll be away. Yeah.
Apologies again.
Anna, you'll just have to come back for committee.
Okay, George.
Okay, George.